I remember that night so clearly, it still makes my stomach twist. The smell of garlic bread. The cheap string lights my mother always forgot to take down after Christmas. And the way Bianca's laugh echoed off the walls like a slap. It was supposed to be just a quiet dinner, Mom, Dad, Bianca, and me. But somehow, even an ordinary meal turned into Bianca's stage. I had just met someone. His name was Adam. We weren't even serious yet, but for once, I felt something promising. I was 23, working at a local bookstore, barely making rent, still living at home part-time while trying to save. I didn't have much, but I had hope. That night, I made the mistake of sharing it. "I've been seeing someone," I said quietly, as I passed the salad bowl across the table. Dad barely looked up from his plate. Mom smiled politely, then glanced at Bianca, like it was her cue to speak. Bianca dropped her fork. "Wait, you? In love?" Bianca said, bursting into laughter. I blinked. "Well, we're not in love yet, but we've been on a few dates and—" Bianca cut me off. "That's cute. Real cute." "Bianca," Mom said gently, reaching for her water glass, but not sounding particularly concerned. Bianca kept going. "What's his name? Discount Daniel? Or is he into girls who never speak above a whisper?" I could feel my face turning red, my chest tightening. "His name is Adam," I said. "He's kind." Bianca tilted her head like she was studying something pitiful. "Kind? So, not hot." Dad chuckled. That somehow hurt worse than her words. I looked down at my plate. "He likes books," I whispered. Bianca snorted. "Of course he does. You probably met him alphabetizing the self-help section." Everyone laughed. I didn't. They say if you've ever been betrayed by family, hitting the like button brings peace, subscribing brings clarity, and a comment brings karma to those who wronged you. Try it, and tell me where you're watching from. Anyways, my fork hung in the air, limp in my hand. I wasn't surprised. Bianca had always been like this, loud, magnetic, always the star. She was the one who went to med school, the one who won every award, every spotlight. She had a closet full of designer dresses and a smile that could bend any room toward her. I was the quiet one, the one who wrote poetry in the margins of receipts, the one who still got nervous ordering food over the phone, the one people forgot in group photos. And yet, despite all that, I had let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I was finally stepping into something good. Bianca stole it, like she stole everything else. The air, the attention, the light. I sat there, surrounded by laughter that wasn't mine, watching my mom wipe mascara tears from her cheeks, laughing too hard. Watching my dad refill his wine. Watching Bianca toss her hair like she was on stage and we were just background noise. "I just don't want you to get your hopes up," Bianca said. "It's not like guys like that usually go for girls like you." "Girls like me?" I asked. "You know," Bianca said, waving her hand like she was painting me as a blur. "You're just simple." Simple. That word stuck to my skin like something sticky and sour. I nodded slowly. "Right. Thanks for the warning." "No need to thank me," Bianca said with a wink. "That's what sisters are for." The rest of the dinner blurred. I pushed food around my plate. I laughed when I was supposed to. I nodded on cue. But inside, something shifted. Not rage. Not yet. But something colder. Sharper. A quiet vow. I wasn't going to argue with her. I wasn't going to fight for space in a room that never made space for me. I would simply leave. Not the table. Not yet. But the version of myself they expected to sit there forever. Silent, grateful, less than. Later that night, I lay in bed and replayed every word, every laugh, every flick of Bianca's wrist. I didn't cry. Not that night. I just stared at the ceiling and thought, someday I won't sit at this table like this again. And I meant it. I didn't meet Daniel in some magical moment. There were no sparks flying, no dramatic music swelling behind us. It was just a Thursday. I was in line at a food truck, looking over the menu, squinting under the sun. "I hear the tacos are better than the burritos," a voice said beside me. I turned. He was tall, wearing a blue button-up and glasses that slid down his nose. He smiled, easy and warm, like he wasn't trying too hard. That's how it started. Not with fireworks, just with ease. After that, we bumped into each other again, at the coffee shop near my job, then at the park where I'd walk on my lunch break. I thought maybe it was coincidence, until he admitted, "I asked around the taco truck. Hoped I'd run into you again." We laughed. And from then on, we kept meeting. On purpose. Daniel wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He didn't fill every room. He just listened, really listened. Like when I said I liked a song, he'd add it to a playlist. Or when I mentioned I'd been writing again, something I hadn't told anyone in years, he bought me a new notebook and said, "I hope it fills up fast." He never made me feel like I had to be someone else. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. With Daniel, I could talk without editing myself. I could cry without apologizing. I could be happy without worrying who would laugh at it. We went slow. Quiet dates, walks, picnics, bookstore trips. He never pressured me. Never asked for more than I was ready to give. I was so used to love being conditional, something you had to earn, prove, perform for, that this kind of stillness felt strange. He told me, "You don't have to do anything to impress me. I like you exactly as you are." And I believed him. I didn't tell my family about Daniel for a long time. I wasn't ready. I didn't want Bianca's voice in my head. I didn't want her jokes, or her sideways glances, or her backhanded compliments. I wanted this, just this, to be mine. 2 years passed. We moved in together, adopted a scruffy old dog from the shelter. Daniel taught me how to cook. I taught him how to slow down. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was ours. Then, one afternoon, we went hiking. Just the two of us, a thermos of coffee, and a little velvet box Daniel kept tucked in his jacket. At the top of the ridge, he knelt down. "I don't want big," he said. "I don't want perfect. I just want you. Every quiet, complicated, wonderful piece of you." I couldn't speak. I just nodded and kissed him. We took a picture together. My hand on his chest, the ring barely visible, and I posted it, finally, for the world to see. Just 1 hour later, Bianca commented, "Wow, guess some guys like lame girls after all." I stared at her words, and this time I didn't shrink. I just turned off the comments. She didn't deserve a reaction, but I was saving one. I always imagined our wedding would be small. Not because I didn't want a big celebration, but because I knew who I didn't want there. We chose a garden venue, intimate, rustic, full of wild flowers and crooked stone paths, just close friends, a few extended relatives, and the people who had truly seen us grow, not perform. Bianca RSV'd late. I hadn't planned to invite her at all, to be honest, but my mother insisted. "She's your sister," Mom said. "Let her come. Be the bigger person." And so I did, against my better judgment. The ceremony was already starting when Bianca arrived. I didn't see her come in, but I heard it. A few gasps, a few phones being subtly raised, a whisper that rippled through the back rows. Bianca walked down the path, not toward me, but toward the reserved seats, wearing a full-length white silk gown. Not cream, not off-white, not floral, white. I saw her clearly when Daniel and I turned to face the audience after our vows. Her smile, big, almost smug, Her hair was perfectly styled, her heels impossibly high. She looked like she'd come to renew her vows, not witness mine. I didn't flinch, not on the outside. Inside, though? I could feel the old humiliation tightening around my ribs. The same feeling I had that night at the dinner table, years ago. But Daniel didn't notice. Not yet. During the reception, Bianca floated from group to group like a politician. She made sure to be in every photo. She spoke louder than anyone else. When the DJ announced the first dance, she clapped louder than anyone else, too. And then, she picked up a champagne flute and tapped it with a fork. "I want to say a few words," Bianca said. I froze. Daniel's hand gently pressed on the small of my back. Bianca stood near our table, a spotlight grazing her cheek. "I've always been the big sister," Bianca said, her voice syrupy. "And Ava's always been, well, the quiet one." People chuckled. I clenched my jaw. "But even quiet girls grow up," Bianca continued, "and I have to admit, when Ava told me she was getting married, I was surprised. Genuinely, I mean, who would have thought?" More awkward laughter, a few glances. Daniel frowned. "But then I met Daniel," Bianca said, turning to him. "And I thought, oh wow, she really lucked out." She stepped forward and kissed him, right on the cheek. Daniel stiffened, took a step back, and I stood. "Bianca," I said, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear, "this is not your moment." The clinking of silverware stopped. Bianca blinked, still holding her glass. "Relax. It was just a toast." I didn't blink. "You made your point. Now sit down or leave." A few people murmured. Daniel touched my arm gently, but I didn't break eye contact. Bianca hesitated, then gave an exaggerated bow and returned to her seat, muttering something under her breath. The moment passed, but the tension lingered. After dinner, she tried to squeeze herself into conversations, interrupting, laughing too loud, making backhanded comments disguised as jokes, but no one really laughed anymore. She was grasping for something. After the cake, Daniel and I finally got a moment alone. He turned to me. "That was insane. Has she always been like that?" I exhaled. "You don't know the half of it." He looked back at her. "She kissed me." "I know," I said, "and I'm not okay with it." "I wasn't either," he said. "That's why I moved." I looked him in the eye. "If she ever does anything like that again, she won't get the benefit of me keeping calm." He nodded. "Good. Because I'm with you. And I won't let anyone mess with that." That night, as we slow danced under the string lights, I caught her watching us from the edge of the crowd.
Bianca, standing alone, white dress glowing under the bulbs. She didn't clap, she didn't smile, she just stared. And I knew, deep in my bones, this wasn't jealousy, it was obsession. She didn't want love, she wanted mine, and she had just made her first move. But I wasn't going to play defense, not this time. Let her try. She had no idea what was coming next. Kona. I didn't want to check his phone. I hated the idea of becoming that woman. The one who second guesses every glance, who scrolls through texts in the middle of the night like some desperate investigator. But after what Bianca pulled at the wedding, I couldn't shake it. There was something about the way she looked at Daniel. The way she lingered. The way she smiled like she was already in on something I wasn't. For 3 nights I told myself to let it go. "He's with you," I whispered in the mirror. "You're his wife. You won." But my reflection didn't believe it. And on the 4th night, when Daniel stepped into the shower and left his phone charging by the bed, I picked it up. I didn't know what I was expecting. Actually, I did. I was expecting to find nothing. And at first, that's what I got. The usual, Texts from coworkers, memes from his cousin, a grocery list reminder from me. Then I opened the message thread labeled Bianca. Only one text sat there. Sent the night of our wedding. Bianca, if you ever want someone who actually gets you, call me. My blood went cold. I scrolled up. Nothing else. No reply. No reaction. No sign he had even opened it. I checked the timestamps. He'd seen it, but never answered. I backed out. Looked at the rest of his messages. That was it. No hidden threads, no deleted apps. Just that one message. A final grasp from a woman who couldn't stand to be irrelevant. And Daniel had left her on red. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, phone in hand. When he stepped out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, he saw the look on my face immediately. Daniel said, "What happened?" I held up the phone. I saw the message from Bianca. Daniel didn't flinch. He walked over, sat beside me, and said, "And?" I looked him in the eye. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel said, "Because I thought ignoring her would send a clearer message than responding ever could." I nodded slowly. "I believe you." He said, "You can go through anything you want. My phone, my laptop. I don't care. I'm not hiding anything." I put the phone down. I don't want to go through anything else. Daniel reached for my hand. "Ava, she's obsessed with proving something. But it's not about me. It's about you. She wants to win some imaginary competition you never signed up for." I felt my throat tighten. That's exactly what it is. Daniel kissed my hand. "She can play her little games, but I'm not her toy." I let out a long breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That night, as he slept, I picked up the phone again, not to search, just to look at the message one more time. I screenshotted it, sent it to myself, then deleted the thread, not for revenge, just in case Bianca ever played the victim. I needed proof, not to destroy her, but to protect myself, because I knew deep down this wasn't over. And the next time she tried to twist the truth, I'd be ready. But knowing wasn't the same as peace. For days after, I kept replaying moments in my head. The times Bianca had belittled me, undermined me, the subtle slights and cruel smirks. I had spent years brushing them off like dust, small, annoying, but harmless. Only now did I see how deliberate they were. Every time she called me boring in front of our cousins. Every time she rolled her eyes when I shared my dreams. Every time she joked, "Ava's more book than body." She'd been sculpting a version of me the family could laugh at. And I'd let her.
Now she was trying to carve into my marriage. I kept the screenshot saved under an innocuous file name. April budget list. No one would ever open it. But I knew where it was. I didn't share it with Daniel. I didn't need to. His actions said more than words ever could. He noticed I was quieter than usual, more withdrawn. One night, while we were brushing our teeth side by side, he turned to me and said, "Are you okay?" I met his eyes in the mirror. "I'm getting there," he nodded. "Whatever it takes." I loved him more for that, for the absence of pressure, for letting me come back to center at my own pace. Bianca's message had rattled me, not because I doubted Daniel, but because it confirmed something I'd feared for a long time. My sister wasn't done. She was still playing a game I never signed up for, still trying to win a trophy I no longer wanted. And it wasn't about Daniel. It was about control, about making me feel small again. But this time, I had something she didn't. Love, trust, a partner who saw me, and a truth she couldn't twist. I slid the screenshot into a secure folder on my cloud drive, just in case, just one quiet backup. Then I locked my phone and looked around our apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, the bookshelves we built together, the paint colors we argued over, the blanket we fought under and made up beneath. Bianca didn't have this, not even close. I smiled to myself, pulled the curtains shut, and got into bed. She'd made her move. Now it was my turn to decide what came next, but this time I wouldn't stay quiet. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from lack of noise. It comes from the moment before something shatters. That's what the room felt like at my mother's birthday dinner. One long table, candles flickering, champagne bubbling, a cake waiting to be lit. And Bianca, in her perfect white suit, standing up with a glass in hand. Bianca said, "I just want to say how grateful I am. For family, for this table, for the people who raised us and the people we chose." I watched her eyes sweep over the crowd, lingering too long on Daniel. Bianca said, "Especially my sister Ava, who's shown us all what it means to grow, to love, to find yourself, even when it's hard." I heard my own mother sniffle beside me. Bianca smiled. "They say you don't choose your family, but sometimes you're lucky enough to love them anyway." A gentle chuckle passed through the room. My aunt dabbed her eyes, and then everyone raised their glasses, everyone but me. I stood. Daniel looked up sharply. I said, "Bianca's right. Family is complicated." Bianca's smile faltered. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, calmly, silently. I tapped the file. Daniel asked quietly, "Are you sure?" I nodded. Bianca said, "Ava, what are you—" I tapped play. Her voice filled the room, software flirty. "Bianca, on the voicemail? If you ever want someone who actually gets you, call me. I'm not like her. You and I, we'd make sense." A few guests gasped. Someone coughed. A fork dropped. Bianca's face drained of color. She reached across the table. "Turn that off. That's private." I kept my voice even. "You made it public the day you walked into my wedding in a white dress." Bianca snapped, "That was a joke." I said, "So was this toast." I looked around the table. I didn't plan to play that, but since we're talking about family and love and sisterhood, I thought it was time you all heard the truth. Bianca tried to stand taller. "You're just jealous." I shook my head. "You said I'd never find love. Then you tried to steal mine." Silence. My father cleared his throat. "Girls, maybe this isn't the time." Daniel said, "It's exactly the time." Bianca's husband Jordan sat frozen. He looked at her, then at me, then back at her. Bianca said, "Jordan, say something." Jordan said, "You needed that." Bianca blinked. "Excuse me?" Jordan stood. "I've watched you tear her down for years. It's about time someone said it out loud." Bianca's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I could feel the air shifting. Aunt Rena leaned toward me. "Ava, we didn't know." Uncle Leon muttered, "That's disgusting." Bianca turned, her face twisted. "You all think I'm the villain now?" No one answered. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. I said, "You don't have to leave." She paused. I added, "But the spotlight isn't yours anymore." She slammed the door behind her. No one clapped, no one toasted. But Daniel reached over, took my hand and said, "That was brave." I shook my head. That was necessary. Later that night, after the candles were blown out and the dishes cleared, my mom came up behind me in the kitchen. She said, "I didn't raise you to be that strong." I smiled. "You did. You just didn't know it." She pulled me into a hug. "She's been cruel to you since you were kids." I whispered, "I know." She said, "I'm sorry I let it slide." I said, "Me too, but it's done now." Upstairs, Daniel was already waiting for me. He held up his phone. Daniel said, "Think you'll delete the recording?" I sat beside him. "Eventually, but not yet." He nodded. "She might try again?" I said, I hope not. But if she does, she'll remember this night. He kissed my temple. I will too, for all the right reasons. I curled into him. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. The room had frozen, but I hadn't. I'd moved, forward, away, and finally, above. In the days after the dinner, I noticed something different in how people looked at me. Not pity, not skepticism, respect. My Aunt Rena called me the next morning. Aunt Rena said, I'm sorry I ever laughed at Bianca's jokes about you. They were mean. I just never saw it clearly before. I said, you're not the only one who didn't. My cousin Leah sent flowers. The card read, You didn't burn her. You just stopped letting her use your light. Even my dad, who had spent years brushing off our rivalry, left a voicemail. Dad said, Ava, I want you to know. I was proud of you. You spoke with dignity. I replayed it twice before deleting it. It wasn't about praise. It was about finally feeling like I existed on my own terms. Daniel noticed the shift too. Daniel said, People are finally seeing you. I said, I'm finally seeing me. Bianca, on the other hand, went quiet. No more performative brunch posts, no cryptic quotes about forgiveness. For once, she had no audience. I didn't stalk her profile or ask around, but the silence spoke volumes. She didn't message me. Not once. And I didn't need her to. At work, a colleague approached me in the break room. Maya said, I heard what happened. My aunt was at the dinner. She said you handled it with so much grace. I said, It wasn't about revenge. Maya nodded. I could tell it was truth. That's different. I started walking taller, laughing louder. I stopped apologizing before making a point. Something that had been twisted inside me for years finally clicked into place. A week later, I got an email with the subject, Women Rising, a panel invitation. They were hosting a local talk on self-worth, sibling rivalry, and toxic family dynamics, and someone had recommended me. I read it 3 times. The invitation didn't flatter me. It saw me. Daniel said, You should do it. You lived it. I asked, What if Bianca hears about it? Daniel smiled. She's not your editor. She doesn't get final cut. That night, I lay in bed, thinking about all the years I'd wasted letting someone else define me, and how long it took to realize I could rewrite the story myself. I responded to the email with one line, Yes. Thank you for asking. The panel was scheduled for next month. I didn't plan to talk about Bianca directly. I didn't need to. But I would speak about women who'd been mocked, sidelined, dismissed. About those who were told they'd never be loved, and who dared to believe otherwise. Daniel reached for my hand as I turned out the light. He said, It's funny, isn't it? I asked. What is? Daniel said, She always needed the spotlight. But it was never hers. She just stole it. I smiled. Not anymore. The panel was held in a small auditorium lined with folding chairs and warm lighting. Nothing fancy, but every seat was filled. I arrived early, more out of nerves than anything else. Daniel helped me bring in the water bottles and name tags. I pretended it was about logistics. He knew better. Women of all ages sat shoulder to shoulder. Some had notebooks, others held tissues. A few came alone. You could feel it. Something unsaid tied us all together. Daniel found a seat in the front row and gave me a small thumbs up as I walked onto the stage. His support had always been quiet, never performative. But that look, that steady confidence in his eyes, made me feel unshakable. I took the mic, looked out over the room, and let the silence settle. My name is Ava, I said, voice steady. And for most of my life, I thought being quiet was the same as being small. The audience leaned in. I had a sister who loved the spotlight, I said, and she taught me early that there was only room for one of us in it. A few heads nodded. Others froze, mid-blink. They understood. For years I swallowed my words. I let others speak over me. I let jokes pass that weren't funny. I believed love was something meant for people louder than me. I looked down at Daniel, looked down. He smiled. Not performative, just steady. Then I met someone who loved my quiet, who didn't just listen, he leaned in, who made space without asking me to change. The room exhaled together. A few women dabbed at their eyes. And slowly, I realized something, I said. I wasn't invisible. I was just standing in someone else's shadow. I paused. But the truth is, I was never the shadow. I was the fire. That line landed. It always did. A woman in the back whispered, "Yes." And the thing about fire is, once it catches, it doesn't wait for permission to burn. There was a stillness in the room I'll never forget. Not the kind that asks for silence, the kind that honors it. I ended with one more line. She told me I'd never find love. But love didn't just find me. It gave me the voice to finally say, I was never the quiet one. I was just waiting to speak. The ripple of applause was slow at first, like people were waiting to see if it was okay to feel something. Then it built. A standing ovation. Daniel stood too. I saw women hug each other, hands over hearts, and eyes filled with something that looked a lot like release. After the panel, I stayed behind, talking to a few attendees. One woman told me her sister made her feel like a ghost at every family holiday. Another whispered that she left a toxic marriage last year and hadn't told a soul until tonight. I nodded. I listened. I offered no advice, just space. Later that evening, while the crowd lingered in the hallways and exchanged numbers, I stepped outside for air. I didn't expect her to be there. And she wasn't. Bianca hadn't come, and I didn't look for her either. Daniel came up beside me and slipped his arm around my waist. Daniel said, "You meant every word." I said, "I did." He asked, "Do you think she'll ever reach out?" I shook my head. "Maybe, but it doesn't matter." He said, "Because you're done chasing that." I looked up at the night sky. Because I never needed it to begin with. We walked home together in silence, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was full. Full of all the things I never said. Because someone once convinced me my voice didn't matter. But now, it did. And I wasn't whispering anymore. That weekend, I received a text from my aunt, one of the few who had always stayed neutral in the family drama. She wrote, "You were incredible. Thank you for saying what so many of us are too afraid to." Then another message popped up. It was from a woman I didn't know. She'd seen a clip of my speech online. She wrote, "I sent your video to my daughter. She's 16. She needed it." I sat on my couch, phone in hand, reading message after message. And for the first time in years, I felt something that didn't come with apology or second guessing. Pride. Not the loud kind that demands applause. The quiet kind that comes from surviving. From rising. From finding your place not because someone made space, but because you claimed it. I stood up, walked into my closet, and pulled out a small velvet box tucked high on a shelf. Inside was a necklace Daniel had given me on our honeymoon. I'd been too afraid to wear it, too afraid it was too much, too beautiful, too visible. I wore it that night. No one told me to. No one had to. Because I wasn't her shadow anymore. I was the fire.